I should probably clarify we're a woody biomass project as opposed to a biochar project. But I think the project that I'll talk about briefly here is indicative of a lot of the issues that you've heard discussed. Let me give a little background for myself. I am a lawyer by training, but not inclination. I'm a partner in a law firm with my brother in Salt Lake City, Lear Lear, that curiously does gas, public lands, public resources. We're currently working all around the country, primarily because of the shale plays that have emerged in Pennsylvania, North Dakota, and elsewhere. On the other side of my life, it could be the schizophrenic or the guilt-ridden side of my life. I have Ruby Mountain Inc., which is a renewable energy company. And the focus of Ruby Mountain Inc. is to develop projects that actually will reduce the amount of fossil-based natural gas that we use. So if I win on one side, I suppose on the other, so it's a balance. But in any event, I work on renewable projects around the country, probably most specifically and most relevant, or at least that we're currently working on. I have a geothermal, a concentrated solar thermal project down in Texas with Fort Bliss. I have a, well, I call it a cow poop project, but it's in Fresno, California, with about 15,000 head of cows. And we're working to digest the waste stream from the dairies and produce liquefied natural gas that we can then operate as a substitute for oil and diesel in the transportation fleets that the air quality efforts in California have so kindly provided us. And I also have the project that we're going to talk about today, a woody biomass project down in Sanpete. So we decided that we would focus on this one. Let me provide a little context, at least about our thinking about not only this project, but the Fresno project in particular, and for that matter, if you wanted to extrapolate even the geothermal and the concentrated solar thermal project in Texas. And that is that as we move away, and as I believe we ought to, and though there is clearly resistance in the other direction, from centralized production and generation of our energy, and establish what I believe we ought to establish, which is a more distributed base, I believe there is an extraordinary opportunity for agricultural interests to play a major role in that restructuring of our energy economy. Now, I don't think we're going to lose oil and gas or the centralized aspects of the economy anytime in our lifetimes, or more likely or not our children's lifetimes. But what we can add around the edges are distributed opportunities. And the reason I want to focus on that is because if you think about it, when Tesla dominated, why is my mind, Edison, and we moved from direct AC to DC power, we basically cast the die back in the early part of the last century for large-scale generation facilities because of the economics of scale that came with them and our ability to move power long distances. Well, I think we've seen that process play out. We now understand, perhaps more than we ever have, the limitations that come with that, that type of an approach. And what we're beginning to understand is that it is possible to build these this electrical or energy needs in smaller quanta or in smaller sizes to fit the needs. And when you do that, you change the nature of the fuels that are necessary for them to use. When you do large facilities, you have to have large industrialized fuel sources such as natural gas or coal, which is exactly where we went, or oil. And those industries grew up in scale. When we begin with distributed generation, we have the opportunity to go back and begin to use fuels, much of which exists in the agricultural communities, that we overlooked because of that move to centralization we made 100 and so years ago. So I believe we're on the verge, and there really needs to be a merger of agricultural and rural interests with these kinds of distributed energy interests. And I'll try to make that point as we go along. And curiously, that merger provides a number of benefits for the agricultural side. It begins to stabilize their markets. Instead of the volatility, whether you're in the dairy business or whether you're in any other business, the turkey business in this particular instance, that goes up or down, energy costs remain relatively stable. Your ability to retain benefits in terms of other byproducts, and I'll show you specifically here, and I could make exactly the same presentation about the project in Fresno that we're doing, just different because of the nature of the location and the needs that they have. But you are able to provide to those producers economic stability, maybe not total economic stability, but a level of economic stability that they have not had before. Plus, you can provide them environmental benefits because we begin to change the system under which they've been operating because they've never had the opportunity to participate in these kinds of efforts. So that's kind of the philosophical premise that I want as you begin to look at this project. Okay, I'm pushing and I'm not getting where it, is it this way? Yes, got it. Okay, I did the top button. All right, a summary of the Sanpete Clean Energy project, of which Ruby Mountain is a partner, I am a partner. We want to utilize the wood and turkey litter for electricity and heat. And I should say my background in bio-related activities started with a grant, actually a contract that I was given by the Department of Energy about 4 years ago to go out and find alternative energy sources that could replace fossil fuels coming out of, or particularly the development of natural gas, focused on agriculture, focused on landfills, and focused on sewage treatment, waste treatment plants for humans. And this project actually flows out of that because as I looked at the agricultural side, I looked at cow waste, which is the most potent, at least that I looked at, pig waste, which is about equivalent to humans, and then also avian waste. And the avian waste as a biological effort is not on its own capable, but it's when it's mixed with the woody biomass that you now find that you've got a project that works. We're looking at the development of an 8 to 10 megawatt cogen plant, so the electricity will be a byproduct. But in this particular instance with Moroni Feed Company down in Sanpete, they have a large processing facility there. So they always have need for the waste heat that's coming off the generation. This is the opportunity to begin lowering their production costs as we produce electricity to go someplace else. We can stabilize their energy costs because they're no longer subject to the volatility in propane or natural gas or any of the other energy products that they're looking for. We can reduce their environmental liabilities, and therein we can provide operational stability. You've got some predictability. If you're buying the rack rate of oil, I don't know how many of you do, but tell me what it's been over the last year and a half or 2 years. Great 1 year, really bad the next. What if you could levelize that cost and you knew what it was going to be for 10 years? Tell me how your decision base is changed with that. All right, simplified biomass cogen unit. We've got the wood, goes into a boiler, the turbine produces the electricity, goes out, and on the other side you've got the leftover steam and heat. And so if you can co-locate this in an agricultural context, all of a sudden now you have something, an energy source and an industrial base that they've never had before. Simple fluidized bed. I'm not going to go into it, because I'm the scientist and that isn't really, I'm not the scientist, but as a practical matter, that's not really the focus of what I was after today. Standard turbine technology for the small scale of this 10 megawatt. This is about the size and scope, so maybe between here and the end of this room, of something that you're looking about in terms of the generation of 10 megawatts of electricity. This is an example of of the footprint, or giving you a sense of the scale of a 10 megawatt biomass, woody biomass plant, if you have not seen one. This is about a 35 megawatt, I believe, turkey litter plant, essentially equivalent to what we're going to be doing down in Moroni, that is up in Minnesota. This is about 3 or 4 times the size of what we're producing, but when you begin to, you can see the scale at which you can begin to produce this if you can aggregate the necessary byproducts. For those of you that are familiar with Moroni, this is basically, let's see, one of these was a pointer. I thought I saw. Oh, that's it. Now I know what the top button is for. This is the actually a sewage waste treatment center for Moroni feed. This is their processing plant that they have if you've been down there. And so what happens is that they are producing 800,000 gallons a day of effluent, water effluent, that comes through their processing plant. That then goes through basically the combined city Moroni feed. City's producing about 2,000 gallons a day, so that shows you the relative scale. So basically the Moroni feed company is the primary, also solid waste, sewage waste processor. We would build the facility adjacent to their processing plant. We would generate the electricity, then we would move steam about a mile over to a separate facility where they pelletize for their feed operations. So we're going to be able to move this heat in two directions, immediately to the processing plant, which has the highest energy usage, and then about a mile away to their pelletizing plant, all of which will reduce their energy costs. Third-party contractor will build the facility. Foster Wheeler, large public corporation. I don't need to go there. You can read that. North American Services. And Sanpete, which is the company that we have put together for this project, will manage. Estimated power cost, $45 million to develop. I'm not going to focus so much on the financing side of this today, though those are questions that we can ask, or I can answer perhaps during the question and A. Loan guarantees, very important. Here, Fresno. I don't care what bank says that they're willing and they got a green arm and they want to help you. Yeah. They want loan guarantees. They want to be assured that they're going to get their money back. They can do all of the PR that they want to, but when at the end of the day, they really don't like doing projects like this, particularly when you're pushing new technologies or new methodologies. The loan guarantees coming out of the Department of Agriculture and other programs are probably a critical part of making this work. We actually went and got a small grant, both in Fresno and here, from the Department of Agriculture. Not so much because the money would help us in terms of the feasibility, though it does, but we're talking $50,000 or $100,000. But because by getting that grant, we had then access to apply to the loan guarantee programs. And those go back and forth, but that's a real crucial part of the financing side of this package is the loan guarantee program. We'll have to go for private sector financing. I don't know whether we're going to get this done quickly enough to take advantage of the tax credits that were put in place during the ARA era. And we estimate that we've got 2 to 3 years to completion. So that would put it at the end of 2013 or 2014. The fuel supply. Now let me explain quickly about the, I don't want to go too long, but for those of you that are not familiar with turkeys, they poop, and they poop a lot. And what you do, we've got 44, I believe it is, growers that are spread over about a 50-mile diameter circle, if you look at it this way. And they've got maybe 5,000 to 10,000 turkeys at each location. Well, they bring in tons of this woody biomass, shavings, put it into their pens. The birds poop all over it, so it's kind of like adding a little jet fuel to it. And then they've got to sweep it up and take it away. Currently, they're putting it on their fields, or they're taking it up to a location where they turn it into the kind of mulch that you buy at Walmart or Kmart or wherever else you might be going. All right? That's a pretty low value proposition. They've got to get rid of it. You've got phosphates and nitrates going into the soil if they produce it, and if it ends up in the water supply, then you know that you've got problems there. So what this project is based on is taking advantage of that byproduct, that waste product that they don't know what to do with anymore, particularly if they want to grow, moving it into a production facility, but bringing that production facility to them, because if I were to go over to the central generation station over at IPP, the transportation costs or anything else would kill me, and there's not enough of it to do 300 megawatts or 3,000 megawatts. But there is enough to do 10 megawatts. We've got 90%. We're going to have to find a guaranteed additional source, not because we think we need it, but because the banks want it. Because the banks say to us, well, what if the turkey stopped pooping? Or what if the turkey industry goes away? I think the former, that's not going to happen. But as a practical matter, you've got to be able to guarantee your production or your fuel stock to make the banks happy. Turkey litter sales contracting. What we're basically doing is taking this out of their hands. They have a guaranteed source that they can get rid of this stuff, and they can do it at a higher value than they're currently doing it. So now, not only for Moroni feed, but for the growers, we are providing a value added where they are going to make more money for doing exactly the same thing that they're doing right now. Fertilizer production, all right? We've got something we can give them back that's in better form, because when you burn all of that stuff, you've got fly ash underneath. You process it, and you hand them back fertilizer less expensively than they can go to the local co-op or any place else and buy it. So now we're taking literally what was a byproduct that was causing them problems, turning it back around, and now give back to them a soil additive that doesn't have the environmental effects that their current process does. I won't go through the details, but the total value is $2,025,000 a year based on our current projections. Energy cost contract. Now you've got a 30-year predictability on the energy side of their operations. 20 or 30 years. I don't know how many of you are running businesses, but if you are, what does it mean to be able to project your energy costs out for the next 20 or 30 years and know that they're going to stay the same? Because our costs of production are not going to go up. There may be a small escalator in it, but it's almost insignificant. Long-term known energy costs, I won't go down the benefits, but you can imagine what benefit that would be. Environment, wastewater, all right? Now, one aspect of this that we haven't talked about is there is actually several megawatts of power in the effluent of the waste stream going into the waste treatment facility. We're not even talking about capturing that at this point. But as a practical matter, when we can take the waste water out of the current production cycle. So as it's coming out of the processing plant, the turbine doesn't care about what the water has in it if it has basic treatment. It turns to steam. We have a much easier process of addressing the wastewater coming out and now utilizing it. We can still put the amounts that are necessary to go back into the Sanpete River to meet whatever downstream water user requirements, but we significantly reduce the cost of processing and use of the wastewater plant, which does what? It feeds back directly into the profitability of the grower relative to their ability to produce exactly the same product, even at an expanded scale. Nitrates and phosphates. I've already alluded to this. Many areas are maxing out. This is particularly true if I were to give you the slides on the Fresno project. That dairy is limited because of the greenhouse gas emissions that are going into the air. Now, I can't handle the belching and the other aspects of the cattle, but I can do everything else on the downstream side. That's their limitation. Then all of that's sinking into the ground and just drying out at this point. These kinds of processes eliminate that. In fact, the projection is in the project in Fresno that he will actually be able to increase his herd by 1,000 head because we are going to reduce his outputs environmentally, both in air, water, and land. That the other participating agencies will then allow him to increase his production. So what have we done? Everybody's getting a benefit out of it, and we've stabilized the agricultural side of the equation because instead of having that industry 300 miles away, we've actually brought a piece of it right into the neighborhood in a distributed generation pattern. Benefits to Sanpete County economically, short-term construction jobs 107, long-term operating jobs 35. That 11 million is supposed to be construction phase investment in the community, 11 million. We'll spend about $1 million annually, and we haven't even calculated at this point the tax and continuing benefits that will go into the schools or the other kinds of facilities that will happen. Now, which are coming back to that particular community and helping to continue the process. This is the group that is putting the project together. Other projects that we've got actively, if you have any, I think they've got the info at Sanpete Clean Energy up and running, but if they don't, you're certainly welcome to give me a call and I'll try to give you any background that you need to. But again, in closing, these are not just isolated little self-help that are completely disjointed from everything else. This is a chance to give the agricultural communities new life. I have been using the example, because of the two worlds that I live in, that the San Joaquin Valley, in terms of the energy that we could produce out of it, is every bit as significant to the state of California as the Marcellus Shale play is in the state of Pennsylvania. It is simply a matter of bringing the technologies to the point where they can begin processing the winery wastes, the cheese curd waste, all of the other agricultural waste, and applying those technologies that will suck up a lot of the environmentally dangerous chemicals that go in at scale, and at the same time levelize and produce agricultural opportunities. Based on the theme of this conference, if I were to try to restore the West, this is the methodology that we think makes the most sense in the early 21st century. So I'm not sure if I'm the last, but that's all I have at this point. Thank you.